Vaša ekscelencijo, uvažene koleginice i kolege, imam zadovoljstvo da otvorim današnji događaj, predavanje ambasadorke Izraela na temu odnosa između Srbije i Izraela. Koristim priliku da se zahvalim na angažmanu našim studentima i naravno da poželim dobrodošlicu našoj današnjoj gošći. Iskreno se nadam da će ovaj vid vannastavne aktivnosti koju fakultet priređuje za svoje studente u mnogome značiti pre svega studentima da biste razumeli i izvorno shvatili na koji način funkcionišu društveni odnosi u međunarodnoj diplomatiji. Ovim putem Pravni fakultet zapravo nastavlja sa tradicijom svoje otvorenosti prema različitim izvorima saznanja. Dakle, još jednom dobrodošlica za našu današnju gošću i svima nama želim naravno da se ugodno danas osjećamo.
Dear Ambassador, professors, dear students and my friends, first of all, I would like to thank the opportunity to thank Uroš Lazarević, who won the first place at regional moot court competition. Also, I would like to thank Aleksandra Dimić for coming. She's from Beersheba, Israel. And I'm glad that we are the host ambassador from the country with who we have a good relations and long-term cooperation. Thank you for not recognizing the Kosovo. So our two countries are small with similar problems, but with big hearts and dreams for peace, innovation, for positive future. And I will now give my word to the Borko assistant.
Now I would just like to invite Her Excellency, Ambassador of Israel to Serbia, Mrs. Alona Fisher-Kamm, to give us her lecture about the Serbia-Israel relationship in the context of current developments in the Middle East.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here, and I thank you again for giving me this opportunity to come and talk to you. When I say talk to you, the idea is that I give a kind of short introduction and then leave the floor for you to ask questions, and really feel free to ask any question that comes into your mind regarding Israel, the Middle East, the bilateral relations between Serbia and Israel, and whatever other issue that comes into your mind. So we have this a bit awkward title of Serbia-Israel relation in the context of the current developments in the Middle East. And this is because in the case of Israel, because the geopolitical situation is so dominant, sometimes it's hard to separate between the context, the Middle East, and the bilateral relations that Israel has with different countries, in this case with Serbia. Here in Serbia, it's quite easy for me to explain it because you know it from your experience. It's very hard to analyze the relations between Serbia and many other countries without the context of the Balkans, the situation in the Balkans, NATO, EU, Russia. So you always have to look at it in a kind of a broader context. And this is why I took a decision about it, and I will refer to both elements, to the bilateral relations as well as the context of the Middle East. So when we speak about bilateral relations, usually what we have in mind are the interests. What are the interests of Israel? What are the interests of Serbia? And what would be the common interests of the two countries? But in the case of Israel and Serbia, I would like to start from something else, which is the historical layer, which is maybe the emotional layer. Not always this is a very dynamic layer, but here in Serbia, I think it is a very dramatic and essential and crucial element in the relations. This is the idea of a common past, of sharing the same experience or sharing the same past. Usually people tend to say sharing the same tragedy, but I don't think that our common history is based only on tragedy. There are also very positive elements in the history of the relations between the two countries. So first of all, we have Jewish community here in Serbia from the 16th century, expelled from Spain, coming here to the Balkans, very well welcomed by the Ottomans and by the people here, and a huge and very important community is established here from the 16th century. Some of the Jewish community members have become very prominent, not only in the history of Serbia, but also in the history of Israel. And I will mention three of them. The first one is that guy, David al-Bala. David al-Bala, and it's not chronological. He was a Serbian hero from the First World War. And by the end of the First World War, he is sent to Washington in a special mission to lobby for the Serbian nationalism and a national state. He is also Jewish, very prominent member of the Jewish community, a fervent Zionist, which means that he is also fighting and struggling for the Jewish nationalism, and somehow he combines the two things in Washington. And he is doing lobbying both for Serbian and for Israeli state and national state. And what he gets is this very, very special letter that for me is the basis of our relations between Serbia and Israel. He gets a letter from the Serbian government that Serbia recognizes the right of the Jewish people for their own homeland. Now you have to understand the context. This is 1917, right at the end of the First World War. A month before, the British are the first one. They have their mandate over Palestine, what is now the state of Israel, and therefore the first time writing a letter, and in this letter they declare the right of the Jewish people for their homeland, for a national state in their homeland in Zion, which is now the state of Israel. Serbia becomes, by this letter, the first country that acknowledges this right of the Jewish people. And this is thanks to this guy. What is important here, and I don't know if you will see it, the second page, this is the second page, now you can hardly see it. In this second page, right by the end of the letter, the government of Serbia congratulates the Jews and wish them all the best in their future country. At that time it was called Palestine, Eretz Israel. It had many names, Zion, mostly Zion. And they write the name Zion. And then the one who wrote the letter, he just deletes the word Zion and he writes State of Israel. And I think that probably you have the rights over this name because historically this is the first time in a document where the State of Israel is mentioned as State of Israel. So this is just a small anecdote, but in a way there are lots of hidden stories in the relations between Serbia and Israel that show how close we are. Two other persons that I would like to mention is, first of all, Rabbi Alkalai. Rabbi Alkalai was the chief rabbi of Zemun. He was also a fervent Zionist. He was one of the founders of the State of Israel, one of the founders of the Zionist movement, a very special one, but I will not enter. He was very influenced by Serbian national documents and books that were written at the time. He wrote books about the right of the Jewish people for their own state. So he was the rabbi of Zemun. The third person is the founding father of the State of Israel, Theodor Herzl. For us, he was born in Budapest, but his parents are from Zemun as well. Now, Herzl is the founding father of the State of Israel, no doubt about it. He's the most important person in our history, and again, he is coming from Zemun. Remember this name, I will come back to it very soon. Well, the third element of the relations between, the emotional layer of the relations between Serbia and Israel, this is of course the common tragedy of the Holocaust, where Serbs and Jews suffered together. There are maybe 3 sites in Serbia that demonstrate it more than any other place. The first one is Staro Sajmište, the second one is Jasenovac, and of course the third one is here in Kragujevac. So yes, we have a common history, and this common history and common tragedy plays a very important role even today in the relations, not only in the emotional level, but also in political level. I will mention the fact that Serbia was the only country up to now to adopt in the parliament the law of restitution for Jews that were murdered in the Second World War and didn't have any heirs. And of course, today the whole discussion and debate around the law of Staro Sajmište, this place that would become a museum. This was a concentration camp and a death camp for thousands of Jews in the center of Belgrade today. If I want to divide the relations between Serbia and Israel into 3 parts, I would say, and I will not enter into it. The first part is, of course, from 1948, the establishment of the State of Israel and the establishment of the diplomatic relations. Until 1967, the Six-Day War. Here again comes the conflict in the Middle East and leads to the rupture of relations between Serbia and Israel. Between 1967 and 1992, we didn't have any diplomatic relations, and as from 1992, relations have been renewed, and since then we are witnessing an important growth in all areas: political, economic, cultural, and others as well. I will start with this event of last year. In Belgrade, see this name, the visit, first ever visit of our president to Serbia, inaugurating a street on the name of Theodor Herzl in Zemun, right next to the house where his parents were born. Saying some words about the economic relations between Serbia and Israel. They are mostly based on 2 things. The first one are investments, very important investments of about 2 billion euros. Israel is the second biggest investor in real estate in Serbia, mostly in real estate, but not necessarily in real estate, also in manufacturing factories as well. And I would like to mention 2 other areas. One, which is the tourism. What we have witnessed in the last 2 years is a very dramatic growth in number of tourists, especially from Israel to Serbia. We are today around 40,000 Israeli tourists coming to Serbia every year, with an average of 11 flights per week, direct flights per week from Tel Aviv to Belgrade. And the third issue, which is a bit also relevant here to Kragujevac, this is the innovation. Israel is considered as an innovative state. We are the second biggest hub in the world regarding startups. We have quite a lot of achievements in innovation. And we are very engaged in the innovative sector here in Serbia and also in Kragujevac. Next week we will have an expert coming here in order to support the ecosystem that is happening here in Kragujevac and in building accelerators and hubs for startups. So we are quite active, especially in this city when it comes to innovation. Last year we also had a team of innovators, entrepreneurs coming from Israel to Kragujevac. And the third issue is, of course, the culture. We have a very important cultural presence here in Serbia with a lot of activities also here. And on the 11th of June, I invite you all already for Days of Israel in Kragujevac, 2 days with a lot of cultural manifestations here. When it comes to politics, I would not elaborate, but I would say that Israel does not recognize Kosovo, and this is also a very important layer in the relations between Serbia and Israel. And as I said, in many ways, I can say that the geopolitics of the Middle East, as well as geopolitics of Balkans, influence a lot the relations between Serbia and Israel. And here I would like to say some words about the Middle East, the situation where we are right now, and what are the current developments. So let's start with some facts. This is the map that includes Muslim countries and Arab countries. We are surrounded by 22 Arab countries. Only with 2 of them we have a peace agreement, with Jordan and with Egypt and with Jordan. As you can see here, this is Israel. When you look at it in the perspective of the region, we are considered as a very small country. We're about 1/4 size of Serbia. But in number of population, we are about the same. We have 9 million, almost 9 million citizens in Israel, but the country is very small in size. And we are surrounded, as you see, by many countries with whom we have an open conflicts. Now, in the last decade in the Middle East, a lot of things have changed. I will not enter into it, but I would say in general terms that if I had to give this conference or this lecture about a decade ago, it would have been completely different. Because until 10 or 20 years ago, in the mind of the people, whether it's right or not, it doesn't matter, but in the mind of the people, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict was the crucial element for the stability in the Middle East. Now, what has happened in the last weekends are lots of developments that have something in common. They have nothing to do with Israel. So suddenly we see proliferation of conflicts when it comes to Saudi Arabia and Iran, Iran and Iraq in the past, Syria, the Arab Spring that started the most important in Egypt, the disintegration of Sudan, of Libya, lots of conflicts, and Israel is not there. Suddenly, Israel, that was considered as a kind of element that destabilizes the region, becomes the element of stabilizing the region. What has happened in the last decade? I would mention 2 or 3 things. First of all, the disintegration of the states. The states are not as strong as they used to be, and we are seeing the rise of new key players that are not states, especially terrorist organizations. You have heard probably the name Hezbollah and Hamas and Daesh, which is ISIS, and other terrorist organizations. We see proliferation of non-conventional arms. We see non-conventional arms in the hands of terrorist organizations. We see the immigration that affected you as well, affected especially Europe, but also other countries in the Middle East. So there are lots of developments and mega developments that are happening in the Middle East, and nothing of them have to do with Israel. So in the mind of our neighbors, although we are in conflicts with them, Israel, that was the problem, has become part of the solution. So on the one hand, we have more and more conflicts, and this is a big challenge for Israel. But on the other hand, we have more and more players around us that do not recognize us, that have open conflict with us, but are starting to ask questions. Is Israel really the enemy of us? Or maybe we can collaborate together in order to stabilize the region. And this is what is happening, especially now with new coalitions between Israel and especially the Gulf countries. And I will mention in a second why has all this happened, because suddenly we have also a common enemy, which is Iran. But I will come to it in a moment. So you have all these developments, and the whole Middle East now is shifting. As I said, Israel is a very small country, and it is surrounded by many countries with whom we have a conflict. And I would like to mention three of them, or four. One of them is the Gaza and the Western, the Palestinian Authority, and then we have Lebanon here, and we have Syria here. I say around that, but the biggest challenge to Israel does not have conflict with Israel, and this is Syria. And I will come back to it in a minute. Let's see very briefly what is happening in the region. Just a second. Maybe better to see that way. For a second. So, Israel withdrew from Gaza in 2005, and the idea was that if Israel withdraws with all the civilians, with all the military, with everything, and has not even any presence on the territory of Gaza, Gaza that felt up to then under occupation would not be occupied anymore, so there would be no reason for conflict. But the reality was completely different, and from 2007, for more than a decade, most of our cities in the south of Israel are constantly bombed and shelled by Hamas. Hamas took over Gaza, and I would like to say some things about Hamas and about the last incident of 2 weeks ago. So Hamas is a terrorist group. It is recognized as such by most of the countries, by most of the European countries, the US, Canada, Australia. It's a terrorist organization that took over power in 2007, and since then is bombing Israel. But what is more important is for them, the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians, or the conflict in the Middle East in general terms, is not a political one. This is a religious one. It's Muslims against Jews. And in this case, you have no possibility to negotiate, because they don't care whether we occupy or we don't occupy territories, who is in government, whether it's the left or the right in Israel. What is important for them, that Israel as such, as a Jewish country, as a Jewish state, exists in the middle of the Middle East. And this is something that they are against it ideologically. So for them, the main goal is to destroy the state of Israel. It's not a question of negotiate a peace or a recognition or put an end to an occupation or what they considered as an occupation. Just a negation or denial for the existence of the state of Israel. And indeed, from time to time, they are taking some active I would say, steps on these directions or measures. And this is what we had in the last incident in May 4th and 5th. We had more than 650 rockets that were launched against Israel, Israeli civilians, the cities and villages in the south of Israel. Israel has intercepted more than 150 of them, has destroyed some terror targets. We had dozens of Israelis injured, and unfortunately we had also 4 Israelis killed. For us, the main problem is not that our everyday life and routine is always in danger, but mostly the fact that they just don't recognize the state of Israel. Unlike the case of the Palestinians, of the Palestinian Authority, where the situation is a bit different. This is the map of Israel, this is Gaza, and this is the Palestinian Authority. As you see, one of the main issues that is on the conflict with Jerusalem, that is this right here. But what bothers us is, first of all, we have here a security issue. Now, you saw what Israel did, which means that if we are talking about, let's say, independent state, Palestinian independent state, with these borders, it means that Israel will have a margin of 10 kilometers or 11 or 17 kilometers to defend itself. This is the right of Israel. The airport is right here, 4 miles from the border. I think that everybody understands that if you don't settle the security issue that you have with the Palestinians, of course you cannot give them the right for an independent state because it puts in danger your own security. But this is only one issue. The problem with the Palestinians is that theoretically they do recognize the existence of Israel, and they do think that the conflict is not religious. This is a political conflict. And if it is a political conflict, there is a possibility to negotiate, which is great. But the question is, what are you negotiating? And then we have maybe 3 main problems here. First of all, Israel has proposed several times to withdraw for very big majority part of the territories that are in dispute. I would say around 97% of the territories that were in dispute. And in spite of that, the Palestinians always rejected, and we are talking about 3 efforts, at least 3 big efforts that have been rejected by the Palestinians. So this is one problem. The second problem is that it's not so sure that when we speak about the 2-state solution, 1 state for the Palestinians and 1 state for the Jews, this is what our common interpretation of the 2-state solution is. We are not so sure that the Palestinians have the same concept. And from several times our Prime Minister said to the leaders, to the Palestinian leaders, and especially to Abbas, what do you mean 2-state solution? How do you see the end? Let's not talk about the details, but would you agree to have next to you a Jewish state? And we never got an answer. So we are not sure whether when we speak about 2-state solution, where there will be a Palestinian state and an Israeli state, whether these are the same concepts as the Palestinians have. So, and the third issue that is now very relevant is what are the Palestinians doing today in order to pacify their population, or on the other side, on contrary, to encourage them to violence and terrorist acts. We think that the message that is coming today from the leaders of the Palestinians is to incite against Jews and for terrorist attacks. Very shortly, I will say something about Syria and Lebanon. In Lebanon, we had for many years a terrorist organization called Hezbollah. But just to explain, when we say terrorist organization, we have something in mind, but what is happening in Lebanon, it's not really a terrorist organization. This is a kind of a military, or 2 militaries in one country, one which is the Lebanese army and the other one which is Hezbollah, because we are talking about, for example, 150,000 missiles and very accurate ones. So it's not a terrorist organization. This is a real army. Now, what is the problem with Hezbollah? Hezbollah was created in order to fight against the occupation, or what they thought was the Israeli occupation in Lebanon. But in the year 2000, Israel withdrew from Lebanon completely, and there is no border dispute today between Lebanon and Israel. The Lebanese also, they agree that Israel withdrew 100% of the territory. And yet Hezbollah keeps on attacking Israelis and keeps on becoming more and more strong. And what we have seen is that at the end of the day, Hezbollah is not Lebanese organization. This is an Iranian organization. And here I come to Iran because geographically Israel does not have borders with Iran. So for them, providing arms and supporting Hezbollah and changing it with the years from a Lebanese organization into an Iranian organization was a kind of having presence on Israeli border. And this is exactly what they wanted. And today they have nothing to do, although they are part of the government in Lebanon, they get the instructions from Iran. They don't get instructions from Lebanon. So for us, it was the first time that we had Iranian presence on our border. And Iran is a real challenge for Israel. So this is the case of Lebanon. What has happened in Syria is that Hezbollah used the war exactly as Iran did. They used the war in order to strengthen itself and also to spread into Syria. So now what we have is Iranians and Hezbollah not only on our border with Lebanon, which is relatively small, but also on our border with Syria. So this is a real headache for us, and this is part of a long-term strategy of Iran. And I would like to finish with Iran before saying something about Israel itself, because as I said, Iran might be the biggest challenge for Israel from a geopolitical point of view. And because everybody talks about the will of Iran to purchase or to have a nuclear bomb. But the question is not nuclear bomb. The question is there are other countries in the world with nuclear bombs, and we are not afraid of France, we are not afraid of Britain or the US or Russia for a change. What we are afraid is that the nuclear bomb is in the hands of the leaders of Iran and what they are going to do with it. And what are they going to do? First of all, they declare we don't want a Jewish state in the Middle East. We want to destroy Israel, exactly as Hamas. We don't care about the Palestinians, really. It's not on our agenda. We don't care about anything. We don't care about the politics of Israel. We care because we want to export our Islam to the world. And first of all, to the Middle East. So for us, Israel as a Jewish state is a problem. So first of all, we have to get rid of it. And if we get rid of it, we have to get rid of other regimes as well that are also in the Middle East and that are not Shiite. They belong to another sector in Islam called Shiite. Most of the Gulf states are not Shiite. They are Sunnis, as most of the Arab world. So the next step is also to subvert this region of the Middle East, and especially Saudi Arabia. And then we can go to Europe and we can go to other countries as well. So we are talking here about ideology of exporting a radical Islamism. Secondly, using terrorism, either usually through Hezbollah, but also directly organized by Iran. And third, we are speaking about a regime that wants to destabilize the whole region and becomes a power, and for that they need to purchase a nuclear bomb. And this is why we really tried or may invest a lot of efforts in order to avoid it and to prevent it. So this is the situation today in the Middle East. As I said in the beginning, it has challenges, new challenges, but at the same time we have new opportunities that we have to explore with our neighbors. Now, when I speak about the new coalitions that might occur between Israel and the Gulf states, for example, it's not only based on the common enemy, which is Iran. It is also based on the fact that Israel has a lot of achievements, especially technological achievements, that are very relevant to the countries around. You have to understand that we live in an arid zone with no water, almost no water, and the only country that does not suffer anyway from any shortage of water, this is Israel, because we developed a technological solution for this problem. So most of our neighbors do need this technology, and they do need to cooperate with Israel. So this is one area. The second area is energy. Israel does not have any natural resources. We developed a lot of renewable energy and renewable energy solution for the world. Now it looks funny that Saudi Arabia would look for renewable energy, or the Gulf states that they have, as you know, they are the biggest exporters of oil, but at the same time, if they think into their future, they do need also to develop renewable energy because the oil is not there forever. Also, Israel has developed many solutions, technological solutions for food, for agriculture, And they really want to share this experience with us, and for that they need us. And this is why we're talking about new coalitions in the Middle East. I would like to stop here and give you the floor in order to ask questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Da li neko iz publike ima bilo koja pitanja o trenutnoj političkoj situaciji na Bliskom istoku? Okay, so can I ask you something? It's not about the situation in the Middle East, but I would like to say that you had a very nice introduction about the common past of our two countries, and I'm curious, what do you think is the main opportunity for the development of our relations and for our common future? So what do you think? What's the area where we can find something in common?
Well, I think that all areas are relevant. I would start with the economy because I think this is the most visible one. As I said, Israel is an important investor here, but I think that the potential is higher. But what is more important for me is to enhance the exchange of trade, which is relatively low. I didn't mention it because I think that the numbers are, I wouldn't say not significant, they are significant, but they are relatively low, and the potential is much higher. I spoke about tourism. I think that tourism can be enhanced because for me tourism, it's not only economic benefits, it's also cultural benefits. It's a kind of bridge, it's a kind of getting to know each other. Look, I try to see I try to look at the perspective of the region, of the Balkans in general, and of course where Serbia has maybe the crucial role. And what we are trying to send a message to, especially to the business community in Israel, you are running to the US, you are running to the East Asia, you are running to the EU, but you have right 2.5 hours flight from Israel. You have a great region with great potential that needs to be explored. So this is an important part for me. What would be else? I think that culturally speaking, we have a very good presence here. I don't know if there is much to do. I think there is, but still, this is, I think, quite well explored. Politically speaking, I would like to see more visits, especially from Israel coming here. As I said, we had first ever president's visit to Israel, to Serbia last year, which means that for 25 years we didn't have any president's visit. We have never had a visit of our prime minister here. So I think that when it comes to the exchange of visits, there is still a lot to do. We would like, of course, to see a better correlation between the bilateral relations that exist between Serbia and Israel and the way Serbia votes in the UN. And this is maybe relevant for people from the law faculty. Serbia usually does not vote in the way that we would like it to be, that reflects and represents the very good relations that exist between Serbia and Israel. So this is something that needs to be worked on. And of course, we would like to see our friends and our best friends moving their embassies from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem as well.
When you say that, so I'm curious. So what country do you consider as the most important partner for Israel today in the bilateral relations?
Sorry?
Which country do you consider as the most important partner in bilateral relations for Israel today in the modern world?
Well, it depends, of course, in what issue. Of course, the relations between Israel and the US are the most important for us. US is our ally. It's not secret with this, in particular, with this current administration and President Trump. When I say ally, is military, economically, politically, in all areas. Yet Israel has always diversified its portfolio when it comes to export, for example. So only about 1/3 of our export goes to the US, then 1/3 to the EU, and 1/3 to East Asia, and only small part to the rest of the world. So it depends, of course, in what issue and in what area. There are some countries that are very close to Israel politically, others economically. There are others that culturally or any other areas.
Can you tell us anything about the universities in Israel? So are they open? Do they have many foreign students? And are there any opportunities for students from Serbia and from our university to visit your schools?
Yes, indeed. Our universities are considered are very well ranked when it comes to research, and we have, I think, 4 universities in the first 250 universities in the world, especially when it comes to research. We have the biggest number of articles in academic reviews per capita in the world. So we have a lot of achievements. At the same time, our universities are open for foreigners. Most of our universities have programs in English. First of all, because they are very attractive and people would love to come to Israel to study. And secondly, because there is a huge Jewish community in the world that would like to experience Israel, and to do it through university, this is maybe the best way. So we have developed a lot of foreign language, especially in English, programs for students from first grade up to postdoctorate. When it comes to grants and scholarships on bilateral level, unfortunately, we are not in a good place, I think. There is no governmental program today that is in force for students' exchange between Israel and Serbia. It existed in the past, but now it is not in force. It might be enforced next year. There are lots of grants and scholarships that are given by universities to students from all over the world, and I really advise you just to follow it. We also have one site, I don't remember, but it's a site in Israel that collects all data from all universities in Israel and offers all the opportunities that exist for foreigners to come and study in Israel.
Thank you very much. Yes?
Look, I think it's both. I'm not expert in this issue, but I know that Israel also is very interested in the Silk Road, not only Serbia. It serves for sure the purposes, the political and economic purposes of China. I think it is made for that, and this is fine. But still, I think that there are lots of opportunities for other countries if they want to join and to have benefits also from this project that at the end will get here. So yes, in a way, of course, it is made in order to serve the interests of China, but it does not mean that it doesn't give other countries, smaller countries like Serbia and Israel, benefits.
Do you have any other questions? Okay, last question. Can you give a comment for currently political situation in Serbia, especially about Serbia and Kosovo?
I really don't want to refer about the political situation here. What I can say is, as I said, first of all, Israel does not recognize Kosovo, and this is in spite of pressure that exists on us from our best friends to recognize. So this is one element. The two elements, as I said, that we believe that a peaceful Balkan would be good for everybody, and would be good also for foreign investors like Israelis. So for us, we would like to see a peaceful Balkan, we would like to see a peaceful solution, and I think that this would also be relevant to all the conflicts in the world. It doesn't mean that the solution would be the same for everyone. Every conflict is different and every solution is different. And I don't make any comparison between the Middle East and the Balkans, as many others do. But I do think that when you get to solve one conflict, it might have a positive, it might affect positively on other conflicts as well, with the ideas that even long-term conflicts that seem to not have any solutions, finally find solutions. In the case of Israel, we are speaking about a conflict that exists since our establishment 71 years ago, and in many senses even before, but especially during 71 years, so this is one of the longest conflicts in the world.
Thank you very much. Još jednom, da li ima pitanja dodatnih? No.
Look, the question was very specific, so I would not, but in general terms, it was about how much Israel knows about the programs, the educational program here in Serbia. I would say, as I said before, a lot has to do with bottom-up. I mean, case by case. Your case that you have just raised is very, very particular, and I can answer you later on. But in general terms, it's not that Israel or any other country can be interested in educational programs in any other country. There should be some specific case where you need to explore and find the programs in order to give an answer to. But all the question of academic exchange, and this is not relevant to your question, I know, but we were talking before this lecture about it, is a very bottom-up process, in a sense that, many people come and say, how come there is an exchange of students in Croatia and not in Serbia? How come? So there might be also a governmental interest, but mostly it's a kind of individual interest, an individual initiative of one student. They arrive to a university and say, wow, this might be interesting for other students, and starts to talk and create a kind of networking that ends up with a kind of agreement, a cooperation agreement. But there should be some individual initiative in order to create it. So there isn't something really structured in it. Regarding your specific question, what I would ask you, what I would recommend you to do is to call our consulate and check it.
Još pitanja? No? Okay, thank you very much again. Since we do not have any questions, I would like to thank you again for your visit and for your presentation here.
Thank you very much.